Hello, in this video we're going to discuss the Tudors in Society Part 2, the Freemasons. Now I'll just point out that the word Freemason, where it comes from. The Tudors in Wales approached a mason, a stonemason, and demanded that he make for them a statue. The man said he would not unless they paid him. Instead of paying him, they kidnapped his family and then forced him to work for them for free as favour. So that's where the word Freemason comes from. Now, with the Freemasons, they have affected worldwide society quite terribly. History has been rewritten the way they want it, and it is quite terrible. For example, the people who went to the moon in Apollo 11, Neil Armstrong, Alan Shepard and Edward Aldrin. There was no Michael Collins. So who's Michael Collins? He's a Freemason. Paid favour to have his name put in there. Affected the encyclopedia, affected Wikipedia, affected the media. So everyone's getting lied to. NASA knows this, the United States knows this, but New Zealand does not. And most other Commonwealth countries most likely are the same. Affected by this. So it's quite terrible. So with the Freemasons, the discovery of their evil plans came about in Kent, and the first person confronted was Yorkie, the Black Knight from Kent. Yorkie wore black armour, is painted black. Some of the things he had to do were at night, and so that's why it's painted black. He also had a tiny white cross on his shield. The shields are not carried by people, they're mounted to the pannier. So again, people, historians just don't know what real knights in Kent look like. They have no idea. Alright, just imagine a 14 to 17 foot tall horse with a pannier with a knight wearing full armour on top. Alright, so knights completely different to what you see in the movies and TV shows. So with Yorkie, what happened was he goes on a retreat from Kent. So in Kent in the castle, he's there for 4 days, sometimes longer, and then he leaves, and Yorkie and his family would go into the forest out by York and have their retreat there. And he would get the horses, remove the panniers and the stores, and in order to keep his fitness, would run in full armour. That's with chainmail and armour plate and the steel helmet, while carrying a sword in one hand or both. Both horses, Horse and Mildred, also used to carry a sword in their mouths, and this happened after they came back from France. Broadswords, which are 14 feet or longer. So Yorkie was going for a run in a forest and came across an incident where a woman was about to get raped. So using a sword, he shoved it up the bum of the rapist, lifted him up, and set him on fire, and had a look at the woman underneath, who was quite beautiful. She'd been stripped naked. So after killing the offender, Yorkie took the lady on his horse, who's called Horse, and he took his mantle off, which is a type of cape, which you wear over your armour when you're in hot places like the desert, what you do is in the morning you wear the mantle over your armour, and it keeps your armour cool in the hot sun. Otherwise the sun strikes the armour, heats it up, and it's very easy to get extremely dehydrated and die from the heat. So he took that off and wrapped this lady up with it and took her back to her home and dropped her off. But she decided to pursue Yorkie and went looking for him. She came across a guy who said he was a policeman, but he was a fake policeman. And she informed him of what had happened and showed him the body of the offender. Sometime later, she came across Yorkie at his family's inn. So Yorkie's son, Chester, has an inn, and where the word inn comes from is knights would look at the building and say, "You want me to go in there?" And that's where the word inn comes from. Unlike what people believe, the first inn, which was Chester's, is elevated, and the bar where the knights go to is about 14 feet above ground, and you cannot get there unless you're on a knight's breed horse. So they'd ride the horse up to the inn and then step off and walk into the inn. So that's something different that no one probably knows. So the woman found Yorkie, and later they formed a relationship, fell in love, and got married. The lady's name is Guinevere. So the rapist's brother, who pretended to be a policeman, later found out who Yorkie was. There wasn't many knights left back then. This is 1854. So he confronted Yorkie dressed in a police officer's uniform. It was discovered later that this guy had murdered a policeman and taken their uniform. It was in fact a woman's police uniform he was wearing. So he confronted Yorkie in front of King George2. So when we look at the kings and queens of the UK, of England, there's a big gap from Queen Victoria onwards into the early days. People just don't know who King George2 is or King George is. They know Longshanks. They don't know who Galahad is. It was Galahad, then Longshanks, then King George, then King George2, then Queen Victoria. No one else. And these Tudors, you can't class them as royalty in any way, shape or form. They lived in a building standing up, sleeping standing up, covered in fecal matter, naked. That's how they lived. Right up until when they decided to start Freemasons. Then they came up with new plans to infiltrate and control society. So in this confrontation, Yorkie wound up, he was in full armour, on horse at the time. He tortured the fake policeman in front of King George2, and the fake policeman told them all about Freemasons and their plans. So it's an elusive, sinister society. And that's where we have a problem on earth today, and it needs to be pointed out. So it's actually Satan's plans. So remember, Satan directly influences the Tudors, and that's where this stuff comes from. So they want to take the world out from under Christians and everyone and just make it their world. There was no class system whatsoever.